Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be working with acrylic markers and I'll be using this set from Arrtx. I've actually been using their acrylic markers for quite a while now and they've slowly become my most used medium. This set comes with 90 colors, which is honestly so fun to work with. And of course, thank you so much to Arrtx for sending me this beautiful set. The markers come with number codes instead of names, but you get used to them pretty quickly once you start using them. So today I'll be showing you how I use them in my drawings. Before anything else, I like to swatch first. It's really important because it helps you understand the colors better, like which ones complement each other and what would look best in your art. If you're still getting familiar with how markers blend, you can begin with something simple like fruits or veggies, anything with basic forms that are easy to color. Start by laying down your base color first. Don't worry too much about the details at this stage. You can keep it loose and just block in your flat colors to establish the overall shapes and color placement. From there, you can slowly build it up by adding more layers. Acrylic markers are great for layering, so take advantage of that and gradually develop the values and depth until you get the effect you want. If you're not sure which colors to use yet, it's honestly okay to try a bunch first. Don't overthink it, especially if you're still experimenting. Sometimes it's through testing different color combinations that you start to understand what works best. One thing I personally avoid is using pure black for shadows because it can make the drawing look a bit too harsh or flat. Instead, I like using a darker value of the base color or choosing deeper, richer tones to build contrast. It keeps the colors looking more cohesive and vibrant. I also like adding accent colors to make the piece feel more alive. You can try adding hints of blues or purples into your shadows. It adds more dimension and makes the colors pop in a more interesting way. For my sketchbook, I'll be using this one from Moleskine. I like to start my drawing with a colored pencil-based sketch. You'll usually find me using red or pink or blue depending on the overall color direction of the piece. If I'm planning a cooler palette, I lean toward blue. For this one, since I'm working with warm tones, I used pink as the construction sketch. At this stage, I don't really bother refining it into clean line art. I treat the sketch more as a construction layer. Since acrylic markers are opaque, the sketch gets covered anyway during the painting process, so spending too much time cleaning it up doesn't really affect the final output in my workflow. This spread was done a while ago, and looking back at it, I probably would approach the early stage differently. In this case, I ended up applying with a full underpainting or unified base tone, but a lot of it ends up getting covered anyway in the later layers, especially areas like clothing that will be painted over with different colors. So it kind of feels unnecessary in hindsight depending on how you approach it. I just think for this kind of traditional acrylic marker, it might be more efficient to apply the base in more controlled sections. It would probably help save more ink while still keeping the structure clear, especially since I mainly use this specific base tone color for skin. Extending it into areas like clothes isn't always needed, but at the same time, this kind of approach is still really useful for building overall values in the silhouette. It makes layering easier because everything starts from a consistent base. I think part of why I did it this way is because I came from digital art right before this. In digital, I usually start with a full base feel or silhouette block-in, so I can immediately read the shape and composition as a whole. I get bored really fast if the drawing doesn't feel visually alive early on. I need a small dopamine hit of seeing forms come together, even in a rough stage. That's probably why I rush towards coverage instead of building slowly. The second layer is where the actual rendering starts. This is usually the stage where everything looks the most unstable, since I'm still struggle adjusting and correcting forms. I struggle with this part the most because it looks awkward for a while and nothing looks right yet, but I just keep refining it step by step. Here, I'm focusing on blending the skin tones. Acrylic markers rely more on layering than blending, so I build transitions through overlapping values instead of direct mixing. It just takes more controlled strokes, especially between midtones and shadows. Even though acrylic markers can work on almost any surface, when it comes to paper, it's still better to use something smooth so your markers can glide nicely. Marker paper can work too, but some of them are a bit too thin. Sometimes the paint just sits weirdly on top, or the paper absorbs the ink in an uneven way, which can make your colors look dull or patchy. If you do use marker paper, I'd suggest choosing a thicker one, like the Uhu marker pads. Those are pretty nice. Texture can also affect your strokes and make them a bit uneven. Watercolor paper is still totally fine, but it really depends on your style, especially if you like that slightly textured. And if you want something smoother, try going for hot press paper. I personally don't recommend cold press as much because it's quite rough and your marker nib might struggle a bit. Since I do a lot of layering, I prefer less absorbent paper like smooth mixed media paper around 200 to 300 GSM. It lets the paint sit more on the surface so you can layer cleanly without it getting muddy, especially if you keep going back in with more colors. Honestly, acrylic markers have become my favorite medium lately. They're just so fast and convenient compared to alcohol markers or watercolor. And the fact that you can cover mistakes so easily, I really love that. Kinda reminds me of gouache actually. Speaking of that, I really miss using gouache, but I've been thinking about trying it again. I haven't even explored it with my current style yet, but yeah, for now acrylic markers really have my heart. They're just so versatile and perfect for how I like to work on my drawings. I can't decide which color to use for her dress yet. It's supposed to have this little checker design later on, so right now I'm just roughly blocking the colors, and honestly this part always looks a bit messy in the beginning, but it's also one of the most fun parts for me because I get to experiment a lot before committing to anything. I originally wanted the dress to be sage green because I thought it would match the warm tones really nicely, but now that I'm seeing the blue beside the skin tones, it actually looks kinda cute too. Sometimes I already have a color palette planned in my head, and then the drawing suddenly decides it wants something completely different. The colors look so different once they're actually layered on paper compared to how you imagine them in your head. If I really can't decide yet, I usually just leave that part alone. I'd rather move on to another area and come back later with fresh eyes because somehow the answer becomes more obvious after working on the rest of the drawing. Anyway, let's work on the hat first. this is the part where I pause and take pictures of my drawing. This is a trick I use a lot when doing traditional art since I can't flip the paper like in digital art. I just take a photo and flip it horizontally on my phone to see things my eyes might miss. I do this often to check if I'm still going in the right direction or if the proportions are still correct. Sometimes you look at your sketch and feel like something is off, but you can't exactly tell what it is. When you do this, you'll actually see it clearly, and yeah, it can be a bit scary. But if you can still erase your sketch, then there's still hope. And with acrylics, there's even more room for mistakes, so don't be afraid. Once I spot what feels off, I just keep adjusting until it feels right, because sometimes your eyes can trick you, especially when you're already tired, and it really does look different when you see your work through a photo. So it's helpful to check your progress that way before deciding something is finished. That's actually how I started improving at spotting what's off in my drawings, so maybe it could help you too. Here's the progress so far. The other small drawings here. The cats actually have their own mini process videos and the recent shorts I uploaded, so you can check those out too if you'd like to see how I painted them. This video was starting to get pretty long, so I decided to leave some parts out and spend more time working on this fish instead. They're really fun subjects to draw and paint. I think fish are great for practicing coloring because they're simple enough to work on comfortably, but they still help you understand lighting, values, and color relationships better. There's a lot of freedom when experimenting with colors on them, so the process feels more playful and relaxed. One of my favorite parts is working on the shadows and reflective lighting. I really like adding cooler tones into the halftones and core shadows, usually shades of blue, teal, or green. Pairing cool tones with warmer colors creates stronger contrast and helps the forms feel more defined and dimensional. Since fish naturally have reflective surfaces, those color accents stand out once everything starts layering together. The contrast between warm and cool tones helps the colors feel more vibrant and lively on the page. They're also really nice objects for practicing rendering because you can focus more on understanding light and form without dealing with too many complicated details all at once.